Greetings everyone, it's time for another Fika With A Book. And as always, because this is the last Fika With A Book for June, and so next time I will be filling this with new books. So without further ado, let's just open this and pick something. So I want to go with something, this would be good. So a green one. I feel like I've gotten a lot of greens recently, and it is The X Talk. And this is a story about this radio channel called The X Talk. In this book we follow Shay, and she is kind of like a producer at this radio station, and her dream is to kind of be on the spot in front of the microphone, and not just in the background producing and directing and stuff like that. And because they have to save this radio station, she pitches the idea why not do a show where exes give romantic advice and dating advice and stuff like that, and people can jump on board and are like, that's a good idea, that's a great idea. And that kind of starts off The X Talk. But the show and the showrunners, the station boss, the radio station boss, I don't know what that's called, but he's like, we don't have time to find exes, two people who used to date. So you, Shay, and Mr. Dominic, who is relatively new to the station, you have a love-hate relationship, you're bickering all the time, you really do not stand each other, you're perfect. So Shay and this dude, Dominic, who kind of, his love is to do news and truth-telling, kind of reveal the truth, and he thinks that everyone deserves to know the truth and be told the truth about people in power and stuff like that, because this means a lot to Shay, because this is her chance to really be a host of her own show. And so she's just really excited about that, and she kind of convinces Dominic to join her, and they agree with 6 months, so they're gonna do this for 6 months. And while pretending to be exes on the show, they kind of they create how they started dating and why they stopped dating, what happened. And at the same time, outside of the show, they're falling for each other, and it's so good. I absolutely love this. It was so easy to read, so quick and so fun. The ending of this book really just had me an anxious mess, and the resolution of it I felt was so beautiful and so well deserved to the characters and the book. It felt like a very, an ending that was respectful to the story and the characters. Sometimes with, especially romance novels, not all, but some, the ending is kind of rushed, and it's not in character for the main characters. And sometimes it's that some of these romance novels have a breakup as the climax, just before the end, before the last chapters. And sometimes that climax is kind of irredeemable, but then it's too easy for one of the characters to forgive the other, that it's kind of disrespecting the story and the characters. And I understand it's very difficult to write those kind of resolutions that are true to the book and the characters. This did a great job at that, so absolutely amazing. So let's move into the first question, which is, what rating did the book get? What do you think? 5 stars, of course. So the second question is, did you leave a review for this book on Goodreads? I did not. Last week was so good because I actually did leave a review for that book. I did not leave a review for this book. I need to get better at that. That is something that I'm kind of challenging myself to do. Whenever I love a book, I'm I have to explain why I love this book, because maybe I will get the book in a future Fika With A Book episode, so but here we go. I didn't for this book. And then we're on to question number 3, which is trigger warnings. The only ones that I can come up with that are trigger warnings that I would say is mental health, like mental health issues and like trauma. Our main character, Shay, that I talked about, her dad died when she was young. And so because of that, she is struggling a lot with relationships, love and dating, because that is like it is so affected by the loss of her father. And her mom in this book she fell in love with someone else, and they're getting married and stuff. And the whole thing with the radio station, that it's something that Shay and her father shared. When she grew up, they kind of played radio together and stuff like that. So it's something that she has from him. But that's kind of like the things that I would definitely say like a trigger warning for. If you have yourself lost a parent, or that the idea of that is something that you would really struggle with, then like trigger warning for that. Question number 4. What scene do you remember most vividly? There are a few that I remember very like well. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm trying to kind of like come up with. There's this scene at the end that is kind of like at a con, and if you've read this book, you know exactly what scene I'm talking about. But that's kind of like teaser, I guess. And also the moment like when Shay is invited to her ex-boyfriend's family for dinner. Dominic is Korean American. Both his parents are Korean, if I remember correctly. And she gets invited to his house because his parents want to meet his ex-girlfriend that he's hosting a radio show with. And that was so fun. Like, that scene was super fun. Question number 5 is change the title to the A/the X of X and X format. I am going to go with one that I don't know, but to me it sounds a little bit corny. But I'm going with the show of secrets and desire, because that's essentially what it is. Like the show, as in the radio show, the X Talk, the secret is the fact that they're not actually exes, and the desire part is that they want each other, but they're pretending to be exes and hating the other one, and disliking the other one because they're exes and they don't want to be together, or like that's the secret, that they're not actually exes. And the desire is the fact that they want to be something, that they are falling for each other and like desiring the other and stuff like that, that it's like that. Then question number 6 is thoughts on the cover. Actually, like, there are a few things about this cover that annoy me. I have worked as a graphic designer, so that is kind of like, I have studied graphic design in university, so like that's kind of like why I'm like, small details frustrate me and annoy me and stuff like that. Overall, I think it's a beautiful cover. I love the colors, like the light pink, and then the mic, I think that's beautiful. And I like the characters as well. What I didn't like is the fact that out of nowhere his nose has a black line, but the outline of them isn't black, and it didn't make sense to me that why should he have that when she doesn't, and it didn't really fit the aesthetic that the rest of their face has a white outline, and the only thing that is black is the hole in the nose, which I don't know what that's called. So that's just something that bothered me a little bit. But like, that's it. It's a very like small, tiny thing, but overall I really enjoyed this. Question number 7. Would you use this book in education? Because I am a teacher, I always I have to include this question. Would I include this in education? It depends on the class. I'm gonna say that now. If I would ever teach literature, and if I would ever have like a writing class, I could use this as an example of an enemies to lovers romance, or just an opposite attract romance and stuff like that. And in that case, I would. But for what I am teaching currently, which is Swedish and English, I wouldn't use this in education. But if a student would want to read it, then they would. But I don't see Unfortunately, like for the Swedish school, it just doesn't have educational value because it isn't set in Sweden. It doesn't tell about Swedish culture, doesn't tell that much about English or American cultural issues. I mean, the main character in this book, Shay, she is Jewish and Dominic is Korean. So there is that. But it doesn't have social commentary in the sense that a school in Sweden at upper secondary school level would find a value in, so to speak. I think this is a very fun book, and if I have a student who would be like, I want to read a romance novel for English class to write a review on or whatever, because you have to read books from around the world, both in Swedish and in English. So then I would definitely say like, hey, if you want to read this book, you can borrow it from me, you know? Like, I would see a value in that, but I wouldn't tell every student to, hey, read this book because of... And that is also something, if I would have been a teacher, like the school that I work at is mainly for animal and nature. Like our programs are literally animal care, pet care, horses, trotting, and nature and adventure. Like everything that has to do with animals, pets, and nature, and taking care of like the nature and the ecosystem and environment and all of that. That's what the school that I work in does. Like that's the main things. If I instead had worked at a school with like media, where you have like students who practice like graphic design, radio, filming, like we have schools, upper secondary schools like that as well. That was my program when I was in upper secondary school. I went the media line, so I studied filming, TV production. That's how I became like how I got into graphic design in the first place, and that's kind of like why I went that route before switching to teaching. So if I worked at that kind of school without those kind of students, yes, I would probably use this and be like, hey, you can read this and get like another perspective on radio. What do you think? Do you agree? Like if you would pitch ideas, what would you pitch? And like you can do a whole experiment with students who are focusing on radio and media and TV production, stuff like that, with this book. Hi, I'm sorry if the everything changed. The camera died. It was like getting too warm because I am sitting in front of like the sunny blue sky for natural lighting. I don't have a lamp, and I have lamps, but not in that sense, you know. Anyways, we're on to question 8, which is, does the book remind you of another story? Book, TV, movie, other, stuff like that. And yes, it does. Like, if you've watched Netflix and romantic comedies on Netflix the way that I have religiously done, I mean, like, every time I go on Netflix, I rarely go on Netflix. It's kind of like when I finish a book and there isn't enough time left in the day to start a new book. I don't like starting books, reading only like one chapter and then going to bed. So what I do instead is I go into Netflix and I go to movies and I go to romance section and I watch whatever shows up there. And there is this movie that they have called Midnight at the Magnolia. It follows 2 best friends. They've been best friends since childhood. And I don't remember their names. I can just I'm gonna say that. And people on the radio show, like they need to spice things up to get more people interested in their radio show and their station and stuff like that. So the best friends pretend to date because everyone around them is like, you would be such a perfect couple, and their families are like, you would be such a perfect couple, and why aren't you dating already? And they're like, hell, you know what? Let's pretend to date to get more people to the Magnolia, which is kind of like the restaurant that is for the family I don't remember like more specific, and the Magnolia isn't doing very well, so we're kind of like, let's do this show. We pretend to date. We pretend that we're falling in love and that we're dating now, and we will end the whole thing with like this big appearance at the Magnolia to get more people to go there and stuff. And they, spoiler alert or not, they fall in love. And I don't usually enjoy childhood best friends to lovers. Like, I like best friends to lovers, but there is something about childhood best friends to lovers that I don't really like as much, because it kind of feels like you grew up together, you're basically siblings, and then you fall in love and you date. Like, there is something with that I'm not as much for, but I love best friends to lovers, especially if it's like they met teenagers or adults. But anyways, as I said, like, I don't usually love or enjoy childhood best friends to lovers, but I really love that movie. That movie was great. And it has fake dating. This is fake dated in that sense. Radio show hosts for both. And yeah, falling in love behind the scenes. And really enjoy both. I do prefer this though, because there is something about opposites attract that I really love. And then question number 9 is, have you read other books by this author? I do think this is a debut. I think I always feel so bad. Because it's the first book that I've heard, I assume it's a debut, and then I check the author's page. She's the author of several books for teens and adults. And I'm like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. This is not her debut, but yeah, I will definitely check her out. Like, if I see I really enjoyed this, I'm gonna I want to check out more of her books to see if I don't know if she's written any other romance novels or not, so I would be interested to check that out. And then the last question, which is actually one of my absolute favorite questions on out of all of these. If there's a TV show adaptation or a movie adaptation coming up for this book, would you watch it? Hell yeah. Yes, obviously I would. I would love this as a TV show, because I think if it would be a movie, we would lose so much that I would if they want to be we should do a movie, or it's too short to be a full TV series, sure, but then do a kind of a 2-part mini series that is kind of I love Korean dramas because they're usually over 1 hour per episode, so that's very nice. And I think this could do that too. It could be one movie in 2 parts, so that they fit in everything that they should fit in, because otherwise I feel like there are a lot of things in this book that would just be taken away, and I feel like they are necessary, and I don't want it to feel like it's moving too fast, because I feel like the pacing in this book did an amazing job at their relationship. So I think it would be nice to have this either as a mini series with several episodes, or a movie in 2 parts that are in total 3 hours. So 1.5 hour part 1 and 1.5 hour part 2. There are several movies that are in 2 parts, like the 7th and 8th Harry Potter movie, the 4th and 5th Twilight movie, the 3rd and 4th Hunger Games movie. They're all one movie in 2 parts, so I think I reckon to do that for a standalone book. But that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed me talking and gushing about the X-Talk, which is one of my the best books that I've read in 2021 so far. Absolutely recommend it. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment down below what your thoughts are. Have you read this? Do you feel like you want to read it now, or anything like that? Is there a question that you want me to bring into Fika With A Book? And what do you think about the fact that I don't leave reviews for books? Oh my god, I'm such a bad book reviewer in that sense, I guess. I love doing it in front of the camera, just talking and talking and talking, but when I put it to paper or on the computer, typing it, it's what am I supposed to write? I love doing it this way. It works for me. I don't know why. I do know why it's easier to talk than to write for me. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I will see all of you next time. Good reading. Bye.